It's tax season, and at LifeLock, we know you're tired of numbers. But here's a big one you need to hear. Billions. That's the amount of money in refunds the IRS has flagged for possible identity fraud. Now here's another big number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, we'll fix it guaranteed. One last big number. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit lifelock.com/podcast for the threats you can't control. Terms apply.
Welcome everybody back to Seaweed Brain, a Percy Jackson podcast. We have a super special guest this week joining us to talk all about the visual effects of Percy Jackson, the entire TV show up until this point, as well as a slew of other amazing projects. You don't want to miss this. Stick around. All right, everybody, welcome back. My name is Erica, joined as always by my co-host Carter. What's up, Carter? How you doing?
Hi.
We are so excited. We have Erik Henry joining us today, visual effects supervisor for Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Hello, Erik. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. Good to talk to you, Carter and Erica.
Coming to us from set, ? From your office, from Vancouver?
I'm in Vancouver. We have a couple of big stages downstairs, and right now we're on location, finishing up season 3.
Oh my gosh. And we're recording this, let's see, March 9th. It won't be out for a bit, but how many more weeks of filming do you have? Like one?
We have 4 days left.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Do you feel calm? Do you feel crazy? I feel like I can't believe you're recording with us as you have 4 days left of filming season 3.
Well, I owed you guys. I don't think anyone's more Percy-centric than the two of you. So I said, whatever I have to do, I have to make sure that I get this done before the season ends. But am I calm? I would say I'm in it for the long haul. Jules, our DP, who I know you've talked to, because he said, "Oh, they're great." He said, "Yeah, we're finishing in 4 days, but you're at the top of the summit. You still have to get down the other side." I have post until the end of the year. Yeah. Percy. It takes a long time to do visual effects.
Yeah, this is actually a question. I think it was one of our patrons. I reached out to our patrons before we do any of these interviews. I'm like, do you guys have any burning questions? And one of our patrons, James, was like, the schedule of your work, because a lot of people work during the show and a lot of people work on the show in post, and you are kind of with the show the entire time. Are you one of the few people that's from beginning to end, working constantly on the season?
Yeah, I would say, of course, Dan Schatz and Craig and Albert, are the ones who started up and get the writer's room going. But I'm kind of there at the beginning. Once the outline for the entire season, once they have that, it's important to bring someone like me in, because then I can kind of give them an idea of we can afford that, or or that's going to be a challenge to fit into our financial purse strings. But so I'm starting well ahead of the shoot, prepping when the rest of the HODs come on, the head of departments come on, and then once we finish shooting, like Jules said, I start my second part of the show that is usually 6 and 7 months. It goes on for a long time. And so, yes, I'll be here. Dan has me in the color sessions. So literally the last few shots of visual effects are coming in. I'm there with him coloring. They're mastering, they're getting this out and whatever they call it, where they give it around the world, all of that stuff.
Distribution. Yeah.
And I'm working right until the last week when everyone says we're done, pencils down.
Oh, wow.
I feel like we have been leading up to talk to you because, yes, we've talked with Jules, we've talked with Charles about color editing, and that episode's not out yet, but we learned so much about the post-production process and the physics of light from him, and now we get to talk to you. And before we get into your career and what got you into this in the first place, we have a tradition on this podcast of reading people's bios out loud. And it's really just a lazy thing that we do. This is your bio from thetelevisionacademy.com.
Okay.
So sit back and relax. Erik Henry began his visual effects career at DreamQuest Images during the company's heyday. Arriving in 1988, he worked in visual effects editorial on James Cameron's underwater epic The Abyss. Then a year later on Total Recall. Both films earned DreamQuest the Oscar for Best Visual Effects. After several more films at DreamQuest, Henry moved from the vendor side to production side as coordinator for Academy Award-winning supervisor Mike Fink on Tim Burton's Batman Returns. With experience gathered from over more than 25 feature films and television series, Mr. Henry was asked by HBO to supervise their presidential biopic John Adams, resulting in his first Emmy Award. Recently, Mr. Henry was the senior supervisor and one of the creative producers of the Stars Inc. series Black Sails. The work earned Henry 4 Emmy nominations and his second Emmy Award. Presently, he is the senior VFX supervisor on Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan, as well as a secret project at HBO, which I want to say at the time this was written was probably Watchmen, right?
Yes.
Yes. Mr.
Yeah.
Henry is honored to represent the Special Visual Effects Peer Group on the Television Academy's Board of Governors. Everybody applaud, snaps, claps.
Thank you.
This is a legendary person who we are speaking with. Watchmen, Black Sails, The Old Man, Snakes on a Plane, the Jack Ryan, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
That's right.
We are really so honored to be in your presence. Will you tell us about what got you into this career in the first place? Like, similarly, when we were talking with Charles, we were like, people grow up loving film, but they may not necessarily grow up being like, I'm going to be a visual effects supervisor.
Yeah, and I didn't think that either when I saw Star Wars when it came out. Yes, I'm that old. But it sparked something in me. In seventh grade is kind of where it all began with a couple of friends of mine. We joined the theater at our school, and they were having a play, and we said, "Hey, that seems like a fun thing to do." Not taking it all of that seriously, but kind of interested in what goes in front and behind. And I go, well, I'm not ready to act, but I'll do something behind the scenes. And the drama teacher said, yeah, we have all kinds of stuff behind the scenes. I became a lighting technician. So I started out in theater in seventh grade doing lighting, and in some ways it's it's not that far, a leap. When we talk about compositing shots, you talk about lighting. When you're doing 3D, you have to light an object or a creature or something into a scene. So learning, how light falls on in this case in theater, how it falls and how you want to get dramatic effects out of it. Was something that I learned in seventh grade. And I met people at that time who were already working in the theater. One of them was a sound guy who became a friend and still a close friend to this day. But fast forward to college, and I was still doing theater and loving theater and thinking my career was going to be in theater. That guy was a little older than me. He went to UCLA, and he was in the film department. When I was in another school, a junior college actually, and one of my professors had said to me, "We think you're really good, and we think that you have a career in theater, but you have to move to New York. You can't, really have a proper career in theater and excel unless you're in New York, Broadway." And I didn't want to do that.
Are you from LA?
No, I was born in the Bay Area, in San Francisco Bay Area. So my friend, like I said, he said, well, why don't you come, to UCLA? So I did. I moved in with him, and kind of what happened was he graduated and found himself at that company you mentioned, DreamQuest Images. Because at the time there was no going to school for visual effects. This, a long time ago.
Yeah.
And he said, okay, they're doing this big show, and he had only been there a short time, and he said, we need help, and this is your chance. And so, I said, okay, I'm going to do it. And it wasn't a sure thing how long it was going to go. It was the Abyss. And I was there for about, I was supposed to be there for like 3 months, but it was going to get my feet wet, sort of thing. And it turned out that it started to become 4 months, and then 5 months, and then he got promoted. And the person who was, the boss of the editorial, visual effects editorial, which is where he was, and he had brought me into, said, well, you can take his place. And I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, I would love to. And I swear to God, like a week later, 20th Century Fox told the company's producers and the owners, you have to become a union house to continue to work on the show. And I went, like from $8 an hour to $18.50 an hour, and I was grandfathered into the Editors Guild, and like so started a path in this industry that as it says in the bio, led to working on The Abyss, working on Total Recall, holding the Oscar, I was just a young guy. It was crazy that it was the right time to be there. I met a lot of people who are still in the industry today, and working with Mike Fink and on a big show like that, Warner Brothers, Batman Returns was dream come true. I also did one of the Alien movies, Alien Resurrection. And to me, that was also one of my all-time favorites, like check the box sort of thing. Lots of mistakes along the way that made me I was talking to a director yesterday, and she goes, hey, if you're learning from the mistakes, you're in the right, you're doing the right thing. And I wholeheartedly believe that you need to make a lot of mistakes to get to a level where you can win awards and things like Emmys and whatnot. It's not going to happen overnight unless you're damn lucky. And I do believe that there's a little bit of luck in all of it, but you also see opportunities, and I saw them and took chances. Like I was making good money at a job when he told me, why don't you quit that job and come and work at DreamQuest Images for 3 months? I had a job that had, while I was going to school, but it had benefits and all of the rest, and was a lot more money. And I gave it all up because, this seems like a dream that, I really want. And I've never looked back.
DreamQuest is a great name for a company.
Right.
Like, that's the dream. You're on the quest for the dream, and it worked.
Yeah, it did.
You found that fleece. I feel like of all the people that we've talked to and heads of departments, like your career, probably from the time that you began it until now, has maybe changed the most. Like of the people who we talked to, like your craft that you do and like the technology surrounding it. Like you said, you're constantly learning. Every time you work on a new project, or like, is it different? Like, is there a different like interface that you're using? Like, you having to like learn new language, new tricks?
Yes. The short answer is absolutely. There's always, I mean, obviously you take experience with you to every show you go on to, saying, oh yeah, we did something like this before, and this is how we did it, and here's the pitfalls of doing that. This is the right way to do this. But the greatest thing, and why I always say it's the best profession, I've literally never regretted a minute on it. There are many times every show where I go, if it's in a private moment or even with some colleagues, I'll go, we are so lucky to do this for a living. It's like we're having fun here. And not many people can say, I go to work and I do fun things. But yes, it's changed. If I told you how we did visual effects on The Abyss, you'd probably glass over with, I don't know what that is. and most of the young are visual effects artists. I remember I stopped saying it after a while, but I remember telling them how we did it with film, with negatives and inner positives and separations and such, and they would go, what is all of that? That you're speaking Greek to me, it's all done on the computer. So yeah, and it was fast too. Like they on the Abyss, we were starting to get into computer animation. Short time after that, that started to make it into the mainstream. And when I say short time, it was 2 years maybe.
Wow.
Then we started to scan footage, which was the precursor to digital photography rather than film. Um, the ability to simulate destruction. That was something that came pretty quick too, and unfortunately, to some in some ways, kind of killed the miniature, which
Mm.
for so long I kind of kept miniatures along, on my shows much longer than most people did. Kind of out of, I think, a combination of nostalgia, and also respect for the people who did that, who
Mm-hmm.
were
Mm-hmm.
so
It's their
good at
career,
that
yeah.
craft, right? And so I knew them for much longer, like years later. Even on Black Sails, we had a sequence where the fort needed to be hit by cannonballs and
Canon.
such. Yeah, and so we built the fort, you know, in a miniature, and did high speed photography and shot it outside, and it was so much fun to do that,
Yeah.
and the results of destruction were excellent, always excellent, and
Yeah.
then finally it became clear that, hey, the ability for computers to create a realistic crumbling wall, or the dust plume that goes up from it, and all of the debris, when that started to take over, there was a moment where you just said, okay, I guess this is good enough, and there isn't really any reason to build this miniature anymore, um, except for nostalgia.
Yeah.
um, and now, of course, it goes without saying that there are some technologies that AI, machine learning, and things that are here, and they're here to stay. Most industry professionals are having a sort of a reckoning moment. Do I embrace it wholeheartedly? What does it mean to to all the craftspeople? And I'm certainly one of them. Obviously, if I felt the way I did about people who did miniatures for such a long time, you probably know where I stand on the subject. But
Yeah.
it doesn't mean I can put my head in the sand.
Right.
And I'm currently looking at all kinds of AI solutions to things. But I guess also with a compassionate side to it, saying,
Yeah.
okay, I'm in a position where I can choose to do certain things, or I can, put the brakes on it. And the calculus comes down to people.
Yep.
Like, okay, this whole part of the industry is gonna collapse,
Mm-hmm.
if we go all in on that. But this part still makes sense because it's driven by artists. They have to move it along. And it
Yeah.
doesn't mean 10 people in a department go in a particular department of a visual effects house goes down to one, right? It's like all of those 10 will use it to help them do something faster.
Yes.
And faster, of course, means cheaper. And that's really what corporate America is looking for, is ways to make things more cost effective. And as artists, we're all trying to keep that in mind, because you can't just
Yeah.
ignore that. That's
Mm-hmm.
not
We do
fair
not live
to
in a
the
vacuum.
people. right,
Yeah.
right. So you have to do that. But I think the governments and corporations and all of us, the people, the artists, are going to have to make these decisions together. Let's hope that that's the way that it goes. That it isn't just up to the people who are making the most money making
Mhm.
all the decisions. I think I'm maybe getting political, but I don't
Listen,
know.
you as soon as you started talking about career, I was like, wow, it'd be so interesting to hear Eric thinks of AI, but I'm not going to mention it. But thank you for talking. I feel like that was really like comforting to hear from somebody who is, at the top of the industry, that like there are ways to find balance and that people are thinking of balance, and like that
Yeah,
that is possible, and like we can do those things, like, and we want to
yeah,
do those things. um yeah, thank you for speaking on that. I appreciated
yeah.
hearing about that a lot.
Hmm.
And that was a great like pathway of your career, and we'd love now to like zone in on Percy Jackson specifically.
Yes,
And
yes.
for people who are listening who may not know, you worked on season one as well as season two. And I remember a lot of the conversation around Comic Con, we were talking like specifically about like the Chimera and like the design of the Chimera during season one. And there was kind of an interesting thing that was brought up about how I feel like you have this really interesting job where, specifically on Percy Jackson, you are creating monsters and places that like visually have existed in our consciousness as like a culture for like thousands of years. Like there are several different versions of all of these creatures and of the sirens and what, Mount Olympus might look like, and you kind of
Yeah.
get to distill those things and also come up with your own perspective on them. So how from the beginning have you approached that relationship between what I'm going to design and versus like what exists currently in our consciousness for what that looks like?
Well, I think it has always been the goal of the show's creators and myself to bring something fresh to it,
Mhm. Mhm.
something that I'm just thinking of, like the Minotaur was a really good example of, okay, there's so many things that you can look at, and they all tended, in our opinion, to be um, too, um, using hokey is a maybe not the right term, but just the idea of a bodybuilder with a head, that was it just didn't make sense. And it wasn't grounded enough. And we said it really should be a bull, right?
Mm-hmm.
That the only reason that it's different than a bull, almost the only reason, I mean, it does some other things, but is that it can stand on, in some instances,
Mhm.
stand on two legs, which
Hmm.
is why we consciously said, let's start it running on four legs. And okay, well, it does have underpants. So there's immediately the audience is going, okay, but this character has to do more than that.
Mm-hmm.
And then what we said is we kept it on four legs until a very key moment where it gets up, and then you see it walk onto the road, and it's got its now it's on two legs, and you go, okay, it, taking it up taking it up that notch, but it still looks like a bull. And the only other thing that we knew that it needed to do was, they have hooves, but
Mhm.
we had this wonderful idea to have, um and it was John Steinberg, I think, but it's got a grab. So what are we going to do about that? And we came up with something that, when it's running, it looks like a hoof, but it's actually got a couple of
Mhm.
segments to allow them to break, and you have kind of an opposable thumb sort of thing,
Mhm.
Mm.
because it needs to grab certain people. And it was elegant. It was an elegant way to
Yeah.
do that. And I think, yeah, the Chimera was another one where we were able to just be unleashed. We knew a couple of things that, okay, we want to see some snake skin. We want to see this lion's head, female. lioness sort of thing. Then we had the tail to work out to, so a little bit of goat, in there. So we had a great, and still have to this day, a great illustrator down in at Weta. He came up with the look almost immediately. It was just tweaking colors and such, and we felt like, oh, it captures everything all at once, and it looks real. It looks, monsters can sometimes just look CG because you just, it's too heavy on one side, it's lopsided, and tiny little feet for all of this. That doesn't make any sense. But he had it all proportioned in just the right way, and we loved it. Everyone just was, right from the get-go, was like, okay, this is exactly what we need. And then MTC did the animation, and we did fire for it. It was live action fire, on the set, so we could add that into her mouth. And I felt like that one was one of my all-time favorite, characters. And in season 2, we took it up. I think the game went up even more so with the creatures that we have there, with Scylla and Charybdis, and just the size, the scale of it, and the added complexity of the water, which, those are things that are super difficult to do, because we all kind of know what stuff looks like, water looks like, and even foam on water and waves. And if you don't get that right, it's something we learned, Dan Schatz and John Steinberg and I learned on Black Sails, is that, I mean, if you go back, one of the proudest things is the water. And we took that knowledge and said, okay, we're going to have realistic water. And in this instance, it was a company here in Vancouver, Image Engine, who knew, they took all of those pointers, and here they were having different types of foam. You can see through the water as light scatters through it. You can see under the water a little bit. It's not a solid surface. Water isn't. If light hits it a certain way, you can see, and when it's fake, when it's not. And just the scale of those monsters with the water. To me, again, that sequence is my all-time favorite. But we have some amazing things in season 3. I think it gets bigger and better, and we've got Talos, and we've got a particular
Mount Othris,
four-legged beast that's pretty big. And I've seen some early indicators that people are going to be amazed by how real all of this is.
I'm ready to see Bessie. I'm ready to see Bessie.
Yes.
I maybe shouldn't say that I actually have seen Bessie. I've seen a little bit of her, but I'm so excited to see more, and for everybody to see her. She's an icon. I'm gonna need a plushie. I'm gonna need a stuffed animal.
So now we all say she so often, and then I get corrected.
Yeah, can
Bessie uses all pronouns, any/all.
There you go.
Any/all.
I love it.
She absolutely transcends the gender binary. I don't think she cares.
Let me tell you, they are so cute.
Yes.
And right,
the Bait of Olympus.
Oh my God! You just we've got Island working on Bessie night and day, and they are delivering the goods. Everyone's gonna just love Bessie, and you're right. I hope to have a plushie one day, because you're just gonna need one. And we do see Bessie that size in Mount Olympus. So I don't know if I can say that or not, but
it's in the book.
The plushie size, the plushie sized Bessie will be prominently displayed in a very interesting way. And just I can't say enough. It's just so cute.
Wow.
But yeah, there's a lion coming the way in season 3 that
Yes.
looks pretty amazing.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
Oh, we're
yeah.
The
so
Nemean
excited.
Lion. The Nemean Lion for our friends who haven't reread The Titan's Curse. Make sure
Yep.
you're rereading The Titan's Curse right now if you haven't yet. It's our favorite book, so we're really
Okay.
intensely excited for season 3.
That's interesting. My 16-year-old daughter also said her favorite Titan's Curse. Yeah, yeah.
Many,
So yeah,
many such cases of 16-year-old daughters' favorite book being The Titan's Curse.
yeah.
It's the girl
Okay.
book.
True.
Yeah, yeah.
You gave us so many threads to pick up on there, but I think we're gonna have to dig in more on episode 204 because that is, in addition to Scylla and Charybdis, that ending sequence of the ship
Oh yeah.
totally disintegrating up into the cyclone, up into the air, was incredible. Huge moment for us. The first time we watched it together, just agape, silent,
Yeah.
stunned. We're trying to figure out what the right question to ask about this is. We talked to Shay earlier, and Shay gave us a glimpse into what was on the page, torn asunder,
Yeah.
like a description that I feel like gave you a lot of room, freedom, but also then like challenge to figure out what that was all going to look like.
Yeah.
Can you, I don't know, just like talk us through that sequence, how it came to
I
be?
would love to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to because that is so gratifying, really, Carter. I'm like, wow, that gives me, goosebumps to think that that was the thing that you just were blown away by because I'm happy to say that that was kind of my invention. Um,
Yeah!
because the guys had said to me, well, it's going to be the winds of that Hermes gave to the group and to Walker and I'm sorry, Percy. Um, and that ends up down in the ironclad opened and starting to rip apart the ship. But I also said, well, how about if it blows, like a hole in the bottom of the ship
Mm,
and it creates through air a water spout essentially.
yeah.
So it's swirling and it's pulling water up. Why? Because it looks good. It just looks phenomenal. And so they said, okay, go for it. And so with the idea that the ship was going to be almost lifted up on a turbine and that water would be spinning around, I had the idea that, okay, so then, as it's ripped asunder, it's being lifted up. And wouldn't it be great that the camera, gets lifted up in the cyclone that is the water spout and can fly by, because I wanted to do the propeller, still turning, well, as you move past it, and basically the camera would be spinning out on the outside of this cyclone, and of course, give us a great view of little Percy right there on the bow, and Charybdis doing one last trying to get right. And then the camera would exit the cyclone, and basically you see the ship pulling up as the camera drops down, falls down essentially.
And that just
And
like came to you in your mind. That just appeared to you visually.
I'm kind of I'm one of those people who just, give me a little bit of rope and it's the way I've been since I was a kid. My wife says, you create with no box. There is no, you start with no, just do whatever you possibly can do, and there's no box. And I love it. I love that I did that because that's how you get to a place like that to say, it's not too outrageous for this moment.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
what this moment needs. And to have the guys from Image Engine listen to me, and we started calling it the Sistine Chapel shot. It was
Yes.
like, yeah, right. It was like, all right, so we're gonna have a take of the Sistine Chapel coming out of the render here, so get ready for it. And we're going to be showing you that later, and it's getting better and better. They just put everything into it. It was when you kind of get everyone firing their creative, juices, you had the shot that starts it is we're underneath and the ship is lifting up and we kind of go
Yes.
underneath and you see the light from the furnace or whatever lighting up and there's little spiraling pieces of water
Yeah.
going up and it was like there were compositors who would go, "Oh, I think it would be really, really great if, as it's lifting off and you're seeing water dripping off the ship that then gets caught in the maelstrom of it." And I added that element. I hope you like it. And it's like, I love it. So we're all just feeding off each other. And you can imagine, I go back to one of the things I said earlier. It's like, of course I love coming to work every day. Why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
If you're an artist, it's just that's what you want. And I'm a firm believer in having all the artists on the Zooms, or since they were here locally, I would go to the facility, and I wanted everyone there so that I
Hmm.
could tell them how much I thought their work was exceptional, how they did the extra, went the extra mile. I think you have to do that. If you're a good leader, you
Mm.
need to make sure that you tell everyone who's working for you how important their input is, and
Hmm.
that there are no bad ideas. That let's throw it out there. Let's see what we all think, from compositor to 3D artist and supervisor, and so yeah, I wouldn't have it any other way, and I hope that people who work with me always go, "Oh yeah, it was so fun working with him. The sequence looked great. I got to put in, this, that, and that's on the screen." And and he was so supportive along the way.
Hmm.
That's hopefully the reason why I'm still working after 38 years or whatever it is.
Yes.
Um, you know,
Important leadership styles. What you said about outside the box makes so much sense to me because Carter and I, like, the whole time, like, when we first watched episode 204, and then when we were doing our, like, analysis on 204, we were, like, struggling to come up with, like, references to this final scene. We were like, what
mm,
is this? Like, the closest, I think we started, like, calling it, like, the Wizard of Oz, like, the
mm.
tornado shot, because in a sense it, like, carries him also, like, it carries him into the magical land. So it's sort of like that transitional thing as we enter the Sea of Monsters. But we were like, there's nothing we can think of that is reminiscent of this image of Percy being this big on this ship as it is torn out from underneath him. We were like, we've never seen this before. It never been done before, never to be done again. Like,
And
Yeah.
so
specifically,
cool.
like the marriage of it just felt so appropriate for the visual world and the tone of the piece. Like we could not
Yeah.
like our favorite detail of it is that there is the time taken to have the establishing shot of like individual like planks of wood along
Yeah.
the bottom getting like
Yeah.
and you hear the noise also as
Yeah.
like you like witness that acceleration of the process felt so
Yeah.
yeah, like grounding and like
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
were understanding that like marriage between the godly and the mortal. And
What a
Yeah.
great
yeah.
metaphor. What a great metaphor for where Percy is at this point in his life,
Yeah.
and like everything is coming out from underneath him, and like his concept of everything with Thalia coming in, like everything is unraveling and he's
Right.
left alone to face these consequences. So snaps for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely incredible. And we could talk for like a million years about 204 because that episode is just so fantastic and so near to our hearts. But we also know that you went to Hawaii to get footage plates for episode 205. So we also
Yes.
want to talk to you about like Cersei's Island and the sirens. We're from Hawaii, so I think it was Jules who told us that you went down to the Big Island, and we were like, no way, because when we were watching like I think the very first like teaser for season 2, we were like, wow, the concept of like black lava rock is so interesting for the sirens. Like it almost looks like Hawaii. So cool. And then it was. So talk to us about that and that visual
Well,
language.
yes. That came from, we knew we were going to build a little bit, a little set outdoors. And we were trying to come up with, okay, I'm going to find some place to shoot. water elements. And to me, real is real, and if you can get it, I'm not just trying to get a holiday in the islands. Yeah, we wanted something that was really real, and we started out, La Perouse is where we were hoping to go, but we couldn't film there. But I had been so all in on La Perouse, that they built it to look like that. They said, "Oh, this
Wow.
black lava rock, then we're going to go all in on that." And so they did, and then I just had to kind of reverse engineer, where can we shoot? And we did a lot of scouting, remotely. I stayed here, and we had a team in Hawaii that would just go and scout, and I'd say, here's what it has to be. It's really got to be a choke point that you have to, even if there's a bay, there has to be a choke point, and so that anyone who goes by, who's the gatekeeper, at that
Yeah.
choke point? It's the sirens. And how do you get past them? And so we looked and we looked, and ultimately we could never find what. That's exactly what La Perouse is.
Yeah.
And so we could never find that, but I just had to pivot, and I found one side of what we'll call the choke point. And then we added, by shooting, different parts on the Big Island, adding to the other side. And some of it is CG, but
Right.
I can
Visual,
tell you,
low budget visual for our listeners. This is La
yeah,
Perouse Bay.
yeah,
Um,
right, yeah,
it looks a lot like the Sirens to Cersei's Island
right.
setup. Yeah.
Okay, so we knew what we were going to do, and we just had to make it look like that. Yeah, I mean, what a fun sequence. You had CC Spa, and there was the tall ship. We wanted to have things like the like a submarine, and fishing boats, and all kinds of different things. So so much fun to do. And then I said, "Oh, it would be nice to have a volcano too." So there is a volcano on the island, and with the lava rock, right? You
Yeah.
needed to. Where was this coming
Where's
from?
the volcano?
So, right. So there is a smoking volcano if you look in a couple of shots, back in the background. We did all kinds of shots, that in the sequence where, Annabeth and Percy are sailing out. All of the stuff on the side is a section that we found. We're shooting that with a drone, and then compositing that into the background of a blue screen, where those two were outdoors in a parking lot.
Yep.
So, and I just think it looks perfect. I don't, no one's going to tell me that was not shot out in that location. We did, drone shots, where the water, had all that lovely turquoise feel to it,
Hmm.
really to give it, some of that beauty. And then when it came to coming around, her last point of view, where she sees the sirens, that one's actually 100% CG. So the water is CG, the lava rock and everything, and because it was something we didn't have. So
Mm.
the great thing is that I think if you watch the whole sequence, you'll never know which shot. I mean, I've described it, but you wouldn't know that shot was CG, because it just fits seamlessly in.
Yeah.
And then the sirens themselves, we had some great fun with little crabs crawling on them that we put in after the fact. And as they lifted up, I said, "Oh, there's water on them. Let's have some water on them that pours off." And all of that stuff is, we're having fun, just
Yeah.
making it a little bit more real every time we play with it.
That was so cool because we had seen those costumes in person when we went and visited the set, and we had like the whole
Hmm.
costume breakdown, from Kate and all the material. And so I was expecting it. I was expecting to see them, but then the fact that like the rocks are like themselves kind of like floating on top of each other, and they're not
Yeah.
just like fully structural. Like you can see the space between them. It was so magical. The movement was so, because like I knew that also that we had stunt performers like moving in a certain way, but then that movement was compiled with the movement of the rocks that you guys then like add on top of that, which was so cool. So like they were moving at the same time that the actors were moving and the costume was doing. So it was like, it blew my mind when I actually saw it, because I thought I knew what I was expecting, but then it went like 8 steps further.
Well, that's one of the things that when I saw it, in the edit, I said to Dan, "Hey, give me a chance here. I'm gonna do some negative space because
Yeah.
I think it will help the performance of the stunt doubles become more magic. If
Hmm.
you're not
Hmm.
if you're not being able to say, oh, there's an actor or a stunt person in a suit, if we can see through it. So yeah, I'm glad that you noticed that it kind of takes it to the magic level that it needs to be
Yeah.
for this. Yeah, it was so fun. I wish people could see sometimes the before and after
Yeah, yeah.
of the whole point where the three sirens are, because really the set's fabulous. And again, I went into a certain spot and put a camera on the level with Annabeth, so that all of those backgrounds that were just a parking lot, with the black gravel that we had put out, that you actually had the water carefully composited in from Hawaii with the full horizon and the clouds and all of that added in, and you get to see splashing, like little waves popping up every so often. There's just no way to not know that it wasn't shot there. I'm just so happy when I see it all come together like I saw in my head.
Absolutely. I feel like I'd been told that it was shot on a parking lot like 2 times, and when I saw it, I was still like, they went to location for that. They flew to a beach. Like I forgot that I was told that it was in a parking lot, and we've seen
Yeah,
that episode a gajillion times. So
yeah,
if I definitely did not pick up on when it was a fully CGI shot and when it wasn't. And I also just wanted to
yeah.
say briefly for our listeners, I don't think we talked about the volcano being on the island, but now that I'm thinking about it, the volcano and the lava rock, it's just such an extra special touch for Cersei and the sirens, who like, Cersei is a transformation witch, and lava, if we think about the goddess Pele from Hawaiian mythology, she's all about transformation, she's about change. And so the idea of the volcano being on Cersei's island, and also the sirens who change your visions and your mind, it all thematically ties up brilliantly. I think
Oh
we're
my
we're
gosh.
we're nearing the end of our time, but I think
Okay.
Carter, you have to ask about our other
Yeah.
insane thing that we loved about this season.
Yeah, I guess this will be the last question. We're big fans of Thalia. We should start by saying that. And I feel like this season, so much of how she pops on screen, how she is defined with kind of so little screen time herself as a character, is through the really efficient use of visual effects. Like all of the lightning that is used, and also to help tell the story of her relationship to her father and the
Mhm.
deceit that we discover like at the end, all the foreshadowing that I feel like comes through in the choices about like what the lightning looks like was so interesting to us. And like I think of the characters, this is one where maybe because of how little she's on screen, the economy of information in these effects was like really stood out to us.
Mm.
And I guess the question version of this is like, yeah, like what were the conversations like about designing Thalia's visual effects, world, language,
The camp barrier specifically, I think, because that's
Yeah.
what we
and the
spent
chem
so much of the
barrier.
season with. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, like and revealing her from that tree and all
Yeah.
like separating her, and oh my gosh, so much work went into that to make that um um not only something that was special for her, but also kind of there's almost like a birth of something, like when you see these golden sort of fireflies that blast
Hmm.
out as she comes out and says never, like completing something she was saying to her father when he encapsulated her in there. it's such a powerful moment that we wanted to make sure that that it had an impact that yeah, as you say, because we have a great deal of love for that character too. We think she's just a great character. We wanted it to have the impact that she deserves. And you correctly pointed out that, you know, the moment she does come out, that you get lightning that is essentially the color and sort of the same sort of thing that her father has. So you kind of like, okay, here we go. And, you know, and then it is channeled out from her and zaps everyone, you know, and
I have
even Percy
goosebumps.
is like, yeah, he's well, I mean, it's such a big moment. I don't know how many times I watched her say never because we were like trying everything to make that worth what it, you know, there's a lot of simulation work in that. Um, it's another great example of a collaboration with a group of artists, this in this case, Hybrid in Montreal, who just gave it their all in ways that make you want to, you know, just cry with excitement and knowing that they were all willing to stay up late and give us multiple versions because it took a long time and we kind of explored a couple of things and oh it would be better if the bark did this and oh maybe we should grow some of the moss that was on it, we should see that like it's desiccated and then it starts to grow, like there's something happening, life is being brought back by the fleece and here it, you know, here she's about to, you know, come through this. There are some times when I do things where I feel like, how is this one going to be received by the audience? And I'm so happy that you brought it up because obviously it meant, you know, it meant something to you. It was special to you because that was one of those things where it's probably more magic than we all um, do on the show.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, from my perspective, magic is creating something completely out of, you know, out of nothing's there. And what is this? What happens when a person passes through this threshold of a tree? I mean, sure, it's about the width of her, but those are very, very difficult effects to pull off. So I have been asking people when they say, "Oh, we really love the show." I say, "What did you think about Thalia coming out of the tree?" I'm always constantly testing, like, you know, are they gonna? It's a test. They don't know it's a test when I'm saying it, but but it's like, oh my God, I love that, and I go, thank God. um, you know, because it's yeah, it's kind of like, you know, when you brought home a piece of art when you were a kid to your parents and, you know, here it is. Yeah, you know, do you like
That's some
it?
good macaroni art,
You
Erik. That's some
right?
good macaroni art.
Exactly. I'm super, yeah, super happy, thrilled with how that came out. You
Yeah.
know, it's a great sequence.
It had a really great the way that the tree we went from like the gold of the fleece into the color of the lightning. It worked so well also with the coffin, like like the idea of
Mm,
the gold filling the cracks of the coffin, which we felt was like kintsugi ceramics, like putting the broken pieces back together, but
yeah,
like a little reversey on the tree because she's not
yeah,
broken, she is like breaking out. So I feel
right.
like that they were so similar, it all magically, like world building, made sense, like the magic of those two things kind of being simultaneous made sense.
This is why, you know, having conversations daily with the show's writers and creators, you know, the executive producers, and all of the hundreds of people who work on the visual effects, distilling that down for them and saying, here's what we're trying to accomplish, is something. Again, it's really fulfilling for me to be that conduit for that sort of thing, and I always put my own spin on it, and it's also wonderful as an artist to just hear you guys liking it so much because the show's creators were also, very supportive of this, and why don't you come up with something? This is all you, but we'll give you this a little bit of backstory or whatever, and then go with God. It's always, I think, right? Every piece of art is better if you're not painting by numbers. Right? It's
macaroni art is not by numbers, you guys. Macaroni art is from the soul. It's straight passion, straight intuition.
Exactly.
Erik, thank you so much for coming on. We so appreciate your time, especially because you're still in the midst of season 3, and like we said, at the zenith of your work on season 3. Usually at the end of these episodes, we have people like tell us where they can find them on social media, but I don't think you're on social media. So in lieu of that, would you tell us what we should be most excited about, or what you're most excited about for season 3?
Gosh, I a couple of things come to mind right off the bat. I'm most excited, I think, if I had to put it onto one thing, it would be Talos. We're doing a lot of fun stuff with steam powered Talos. So that you get a sense of a little, Hephaestus might have used that. I think because, of its scale, and I'll just say that it's going to be the most challenging of sequences for me and for the team who's doing it. And I guess that probably, challenge is what you want, right? So that's what I'm looking most forward to delivering to you and to the audience at large.
That's such a fantastic answer, especially because that's a scene that leads into such an important watershed moment for the series. Like our first, this is not a spoiler, it happens in the books. Our first big death, like that really, it changes everything. So I could see why that would be such a big monumental sequence to create. Yeah, exactly. Wow. Thank you so much, Erik. We really, really, really appreciate your time. Everybody, clap wherever you're listening in your car, or if you're folding your laundry or whatever. Go ahead and give a round of applause to Erik Henry. We're so appreciative for having him here. And we'll see you all next week for more awesome interviews with Percy Jackson Season 2 behind the scenes, folks. So we'll see y'all then. Bye, everybody.
All right.
Bye, all.
Bye-bye.